Right now in Golf Central, we're watching two bubbles at TPC Boston. First, only 70 of 100 players will advance in the FedEx Cup playoffs. And second, it's the final week for President's Cup points. We reveal the big names on the outside looking in.
We all want to drive it like DJ. Coming up, the tips you need to hit it longer and straighter. And we count down the top 5 drives of DJ's career.
He played in 8 straight Tour Championships, but now he's missed the FedEx Cup playoffs for 2 straight years. We'll tell you what happened to Hunter Mahan and what he's doing to get back to the top.
Plus, this world #1 is ready to tee it high and let it fly in the World Long Drive Championship. Meet the entertaining Maurice Allen straight ahead on Golf Central.
Golf Central. Brought to you by Titleist.
Here's a look at the top storylines ahead of the Dell Technologies Championship at TPC Boston. 96 of the top 100 in the FedEx Cup standings are playing this week. The exceptions are Henrik Stenson, J.B. Holmes, Scott Piercy, and Brant Snedeker. The top 70 advance to the BMW Championship in a couple weeks. That will be played at Conway Farms in Illinois. And the President's Cup is in the spotlight right now. It's the last week to earn points for the U.S. and international teams. The top 10 qualify on each side in points, and each side will also have 2 captains' picks. That will happen next week. On the United States side, just 23 points separate Charlie Hoffman in 10th place and Kevin Chappell in 11th. Patrick Reed currently sits in the 9th position. Certainly not a lock to make the team just yet. The top 10 in points at the end of the Dell Technologies Championship qualify for the U.S. squad. Here are the guys on the outside looking in right now. The players ranked 11th through 20th in the current Ryder Cup standings. Plenty of notable names too, but none bigger than Phil Mickelson, who is the only player on either side to play in all 11 matches. We welcome you in to Golf Central. Lisa Cornwell, Billy Kratzert, Tim Rosafort, and Matt Adams will join us in just a moment. Look, Billy, you can go any way you want here, but Steve Stricker will have a couple picks. We just showed the list of the guys outside looking in. Of course, that can change. But who are you eyeballing?
I'm actually going with a couple of lefties. I'm going to go ahead. I know it's hard to bypass Kevin Chappell, but I'm going to bypass him and go to Brian Harman. He won again this year. He was runner-up at the U.S. Open. And when you look at his strokes game putting, what he does on the greens, that's special. He's 4th in strokes game putting. On the other hand, Chappell, even though he's a good ball striker, he struggles with the putter sometimes, and it gets a little dodgy. And then I'm going to go with the big lefty, Phil Mickelson, simply because 22 straight teams. You look at what he has done. You look at what he did, the body of work that he did last year at the Ryder Cup. He has that ability to take the younger players under his wing, motivate them, get them going. I just think that Phil is the perfect mix. And going to New York, I think it's a perfect spot, and I think he can just melt the whole team together, and he just brings so many qualities to the table, Lisa.
He's not just the lefty. He is the big lefty. As we take a look at his record in these matches, President's Cup versus Ryder Cup, obviously President's Cup has been a little bit better for him, and not just him individually, but for the U.S. team in both sides.
Yeah, and I think that's a little misleading right there, the record. I think he certainly brings a lot more than just the pure numbers, and that's what I like about Mickelson. And quite frankly, he may be one of the top 2 guys in the locker room that you want there. You want a Kuchar, you want a Mickelson, you want Fowler. You want all these guys that get along well, and Mickelson is the guy that I would put my finger on right now.
All right, let's go to the other side, the international side. Hideki Matsuyama and Jason Day anchor the international team, one that is looking for its first ever win on U.S. soil. Off another strong finish Sunday in the Northern Trust, Johnny Vegas moved up to 8th in the standings. Canadian Adam Hadwin currently holds the 10th spot in the standings. Some notables on this side of the board, and there are plenty. Of course, you focus on Emiliano Grillo, Billy, Danny Lee. I mean, a lot of familiar names, maybe some not so familiar. But look, Nick Price has been doing his homework. He wants to win this one badly.
Well, he does want to win it badly, and he's had to do a lot of hard homework.
Right.
But I think one of the obvious picks for Nick Price is Tanahara. I think that he's that player that would fit well with Matsuyama. You look at what he did at the Dell Match Play, finished fourth, lost in the semifinals to Bill Haas 2-1. And I just think that he has that ability to make Matsuyama a little more comfortable. And he's a player that's just kind of got to stick his nose in the fight, and he kind of stays there. So Tanahara is a guy that I think not only does he bring a lot so far as his game to the table, but I think he brings a little bit of comfort, which I think is going to go a long ways for Hideki Matsuyama, because there are times when Matsuyama feels uncomfortable, and then all of a sudden the performance is not what we see. And then I think the next pick is going to be the tough one, Lisa. Where do you go from there? I'm going to have to say, instead of Ben-An or Grillo, you go to a guy like Danny Lee, simply because of his ability to make the big putt at the big time.
One guy who doesn't have to worry about being a pick is former world #1 Adam Scott. This will mark the 8th time Scott has appeared in the biennial matches. And we thought it might have been the first time we would have seen him in action for over a month, with his wife expecting their second child, but his son Byron arrived last week earlier than expected, so Scott will be teeing it up this week in the Dell Technologies Championship, where he's currently 73rd in the FedEx Cup standings. As we take a look at some of the notables trying to advance, again, the top 70 move on in a couple weeks to the BMW. Adam Scott currently in the 73rd spot, and all of these players fighting to move on. But look, we see a lot of movement every single week in the playoffs, and we expect that again this week at TPC Boston. Tonight, learn how to crush your driver like major champion Dustin Johnson, plus see how your grip could actually be costing you distance. Don't miss an all-new School of Golf tonight, 7 Eastern. As Hurricane Harvey continues to wreak havoc on the Houston area, some experts have projected the storm could end up costing as much as $40 billion in total damages. Of course, our thoughts remain with everyone impacted by this brutal storm, and we applaud all those doing what they can to help make a difference. And that includes Rosie, as we say hello to Tim Rosafort. Some familiar faces in our sport really stepping up to the plate. Great to see.
Talked to Chris Stroud today. He's up at the TPC Boston at his home down in the suburbs north of Houston. Up in Spring are about 20 people. It started out as kind of a hurricane party, and it ended up to be sort of an evacuation center. And he's on some high ground there with his house. But just to give you an idea of how deep the water is, just outside his driveway, he's got a 5-foot truck, Lisa. This was shot up one of those big wheels. You get it. It's sitting up high. And his friend of his, who's staying with him, is a Navy SEAL, has actually been coordinating some of the escape avenues for people in his neighborhood. And you can just see there's the hood of the car, 5 feet in the air, and you can see how high the water is. So Stroud, being a native, or being a resident now, has last night at a dinner up at Silo Ridge in upstate New York, he pledged $10,000 out of his pocket, and then 10% of what he earns this week. There is plans long term to have a big fundraiser down in South Florida, maybe at the Floridian. Jim Crane is the owner of the Astros, also owner of the golf course. Bob McNair, also owner of the football team in Houston, and then ultimately the Texans. And then ultimately, while Stroud's donation is going to go to the American Red Cross, you're going to have an announcement from the PGA Tour at 10 tomorrow in terms of what they plan to do to help in the recovery down in the Houston area.
What about Sergio Garcia? He sent out a tweet today. Could possibly be a lot of money, and we know that Sergio, when he is on, he is a birdie and eagle machine. He and his wife, his new wife, Angela Akins Garcia, she's a Texas native, and they are doing everything that they can to kind of combine golf and this recovery effort.
Yeah, and just an example of many voices that are going to step forward over the course of time. It's just a tradition in a game of golf to step up at times like this and help people out.
Great to see. What about the University of Houston women's golf team? They have a tournament coming up. They're having to sort of obviously adjust the way that they practice. What are they doing? Well,
it's been quite an odyssey for them. First, they had to recover their golf clubs in a storage locker at the Golf Club of Houston, which took 3 kayaks. The coach of the women's team, Jared Chadwell, the coach of the men's team, and several friends, along with some rafts that they blew up from their backyards. They got 13 sets of clubs out, a couple of TrackMan computers, and then headed off on a journey. They made it to Dallas today, first time they've seen sun. They've talked to J.T. Turner, who was the coach at Tulane when Katrina hit there. He said there's no manual for this. The young women on that team are basically with their golf clubs and backpacks. They had to evacuate themselves to some extent. So just another footprint in a golf city and how it's being affected by this awful tragedy.
Yeah, it's good to know that they're safe, and look, it's going to be something that those folks deal with for a long time, and certainly we will continue to send our best wishes to all of those people affected by this horrific storm. Well, he's one of the best drivers of the golf ball the game has ever seen. Coming up, the cream of the crop from Dustin Johnson off the tee. And speaking of great drivers, he's currently the king of them all when it comes to distance. You'll get to see what's behind the success of World Long Drive #1, Maurice Allen. And the rules of golf are set to undergo some major changes. We have the details and dates you need to know ahead on Golf Central.
Golf Central is brought to you by the Volke Design SM6 wedges, progressive design, precision performance. Grip Confidence, Grip Golf Pride.